Heads up, you are in the Hoodwood, YouTube's foremost corner for sports talk and discussion. I'm your man KJ. This week, the big game on tap. Who I think wins and why. And why the media continues to make this one of the most cringe-worthy weeks of the sports calendar. Thoughts on Warren Sapp and why he is guzzling the haterade. And who I think should get the call from the Hall of Fame and get their bust in Canton. My thoughts on Kevin Durant and why he is the best player in the NBA, bar none, and why college basketball should fear the Wichita State Shockers, one of the teams that you probably know nothing about, even though they made the Final Four. All that, plus Fat Dapper Head Slap, and a whole bunch more sports talk discussion here in the Hoodwood. Are you ready? Let's go! Greetings from the Hoodwood, where for some reason 20 degrees seems like a heat wave. I'm your man KJ, and it's just about that time. No, we're not going groundhog hunting just yet, but Groundhog Day is the day of the big game. Super Bowl 48, where the Seahawks and the Broncos are the last two standing, and they'll be in the cold and shivering swamplands of New Jersey. And I will want to see how long it'll be before Roger Goodell runs for his heated suite, because it's only going to be about 35 degrees, maybe, at kickoff. But you have two teams that are left, the Seahawks, NFC champions. You have Russell Wilson piloting the crew, and the recalcitrant but beastly Marshawn Lynch as one of their vital cogs of their offensive machine. But the thing about Seattle is their defense. Richard Sherman leading a vastly, I still think, underrated defense that shut down opponents left and right through the playoffs and through a 13-win regular season as the number one seed of NFC. They will be taking on the number one seed of the AFC, the Denver Broncos, led by the we're just waiting for him to retire so we can start the bust making Peyton Manning, who had an absolutely obscene year. I mean, by any standards. I mean, even with the pass happy NFL getting where it is, where it seems like everybody and their brother's throwing over 4,000 yards, he threw for an NFL record 5,500 yards and 55. Just the number just blows me away. How many touchdowns and yards he threw, and how many receivers, the bulk of his receivers, Wes Walker, Julius Thomas, Demarius Thomas. The numbers just roll off of how many 1,000-yard, 10-touchdown receivers he has, and everybody is just so on Peyton Manning and can he win his second Super Bowl. And that leads me to one of the points that I just don't understand is why the media constantly wants to make a good guy, bad guy thing. I don't know if it's just a lazy media narrative, but why not just celebrate you got two good teams in the Super Bowl, first time since 2009 that we've had two number one seeds. Ironically, the last time we had two number one seeds, Peyton Manning was the quarterback of that team. He piloted the Indianapolis Colts as they lost to the New Orleans Saints in Super Bowl 40. I can never remember. They never keep the numbers straight. I think it was 44. It was. I know it was in South Beach in 2010. That was 4 years ago. So that'd been 44. I'll never keep the numbers straight. I think after 30, I started losing track of the numbers. I could probably tell you which Super Bowl was which, but the numbers getting so great now. Year after next is gonna be Super Bowl L. I mean, you have so many Roman numerals. But I digress. The Super Bowl is probably one of the most watched sporting events in the nation, and most people all either watch it for the football game or for the commercials. Me, I do a little bit of both, or football game commercials or halftime. Me, I watch the game, kind of pay attention to the commercials, and use halftime to go to the bathroom. But This is going to be a game that's going to be worth watching. Both these teams, I think, are evenly matched. I think that the Seahawks offense is a little bit better than advertised, and I think the Broncos defense is coming on so much better with Terrence Potros Knighton coming on really strong to be an anchor of that defense. It really shut down Patriots running game in the AFC title game. And I think if they can slow down, if not stop, the Seahawks running game, at least slow them down, I think that's plus in the Broncos column. Now, the Broncos offense is on point. As I've said before, Manning has so many weapons, and he is such a student of the game. And he can play those Jedi mind tricks. He's always on the line, pointing and calling. And the city of Omaha is just, in love with him because one of his signal calls is Omaha. What that means, I don't think anybody will ever really know. But he runs the best offense in the game, period. And he has gotten so much more comfortable with that offense. And the tempo that they run will wear teams down. You can't prepare for an offense like that. A team like that is just so quick to the ball. And they don't run so much the old school hurry up offense, but their offense is so predicated on timing and getting to the ball and moving quickly and keeping the defense off balance and not able to make free substitutions. And you wonder, will Richard Sherman be that much of a factor? What do I think? I think that it's going to be a good close game, but I think it's going to be a lot more higher scoring than the Seahawks want. Seahawks want to keep this game in the teens and the low 20s. Broncos, the Broncos scored over 600 points. They want to keep this game high. They want to keep the tempo fast. They want to make it attractive. The weather, I don't think will be that much of a factor. It's not supposed to be snowing. The wind in MetLife Stadium is not going to be that much of a factor. I think the Broncos wear the Seahawks down. Let's call it 34-24. Broncos win the game and win their first Super Bowl since the Halcyon days of John Elway, tail end of his career, and Peyton Manning becomes the first quarterback to win Super Bowls with two different teams. And that hasn't happened in the nearly 50 years of the Super Bowl. Now, somebody asked me once, do I consider myself a member of the media? And I guess with this online show, I would consider myself a fringe member of the media. I mean, I don't have any kind of credentials or press passes. The press pass I got back there in my ticket collection was from 1999 when I was still working radio. But I see the literally hundreds of media members that assemble in Newark in the Prudential Center for this week's media days, and I scratch my head at some of the stupid questions, idiotic questions that they throw at the players. I mean, you can only ask about game planning so much, and I can understand that. And they're not going to say that much about the game plan. I mean, but you ask the players, somebody asked Peyton Manning, who is your favorite housewife from the Housewives of New York, New Jersey? And he had the look on his face like, why are you asking me this question? I want to jump up and say, why are you asking that question? Even though I'm far enough away from the Meadowlands where my voice can't be heard, but I'm still puzzled as to why you have these idiotic questions handled by these idiotic people. I mean, why does MTV News need someone at the Super Bowl? Why was there someone dressed as Where's Waldo or Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart? Why? I mean, I know everyone is trying to fish for that angle. They're trying to get that funny story or that crazy quote. But the media has long been known for its stupid questions. I mean, you go back to Super Bowl 22 when someone asked Doug Williams, how long have you been a black quarterback? It is just those type of idiotic questions that the media just seems to pile on top of one another. And in that same vein of thought, you have the loquacious Richard Sherman, who, after the whole thug labeling after the NFC title game, seemed to dial it back a little bit. and have just more snappy quotes, but nothing that was going to be considered outrageous. Sherman has always been a talker, and as a defensive back, they are known like wide receivers to be talkers. They feed themselves on that chit chat, and that's something that you just can't just take away. It's part of the game. And then you have, on the other hand, you have Marshawn Lynch, who doesn't want to talk. He's reminding people somewhat of the Cowboys' Dwayne Thomas from back in the day, who just didn't say anything to the media. Lynch drew a $50,000 fine from the NFL that was rescinded because he wasn't talking to the media. And I wonder why is he even needed for him to talk to the media. I mean, he's given great interviews, and I've seen his interviews, and it seems like when put in the right situation, he can give a funny, eloquent interview. But when he's in that whole focusing for the game, and the media keeps pressing on him and keeps pushing on him, they want him to say something crazy or outrageous or stupid so they can run with it. And I think, personally, I think that's wrong. What other thing I think is wrong is that the media is so hell-bent on a good guy, bad guy scenario. Seahawks are the bad guy. Peyton Manning and the Broncos are the good guy. It's stupid. You have two of the NFL's best teams. I mean, the record bears that out. You have two great quarterbacks. You have two teams that are, at the top of their game, at the first rank. This should be celebrated. This shouldn't be a dividing line of, this team is a good guy, that team is a bad guy, whatever. And it isn't the fans that are doing it. Of course, the fans of Seahawks are going to say the Broncos are the bad guy. The fans of the Broncos are going to say the Seahawks are the bad guy because it's the game. It's the way the game is drawn up. But the media to continue to push that line and that limit is just wrong. And I don't think that really needs to be done. I'm going to enjoy the game because it's two teams. I have no dog in this fight. But I'm going to enjoy the game, and whatever team comes out on top, I'm going to rightly lionize them and champion them as the best team in football because that's exactly what they are. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Warren Sapp is in the Hall of Fame, rightly so. And it kind of makes me feel a little bit old because Warren Sapp is only a couple of months younger than me. So to know someone who is of my age is in the Hall of Fame is a little disconcerting. But the fact that he is knocking one of the candidates for the Hall of Fame, Michael Strahan, the longtime defensive stalwart for the New York Giants, the fact that he continues to knock Strahan's candidacy for the Hall of Fame is puzzling and disturbing to me. It just, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out why Sapp decides, because he's in the Hall of Fame, he's going to knock other players or people who as he thinks is not worthy. I mean, I've never been a big Michael Strahan fan. I never thought that much of his playing career. But when you look at the numbers, he's put up some serious numbers. And I dare say he was a more of an impactful player for the Giants over a longer period of time than Sapp was for the Bucks and the Raiders. I mean, yeah, both Sapp and Strahan both have a Super Bowl ring. Both of them were defensive stoppers. Sapp played defensive tackle. Strahan played defensive end. So their numbers, sack numbers being what they are, people kind of, juggle them around and kind of can say, one player was more impactful for the other. But when it comes to best of the position, and Canton holds the best of the game. That's the Valhalla of football. Where the best. You make the NFL, you got to be great at what you do. To have a bust in Canton, you got to be the best of the best. They don't let just anybody in Canton. I mean, anybody can go to Canton. I've been there a couple of times. But not everybody has a bust in the Hall of Fame. There are fewer than 500 busts in that hall. And they've been playing NFL close to 100 years. Not everybody can get into the Hall of Fame. For Warren Sapp to continue to throw brickbats at Michael Strahan to say he's not worthy smacks of haterade, and it makes no sense. And there's no justification for it. I'm still trying to figure out, as a lot of people are, what Michael Strahan did to deserve such vitriol, such haterade. I mean, is it because Michael Strahan went on to bigger and better things after his playing career was done? Is it because he was more liked by the media? The whole gap tooth smile and goofy attitude being what they are. But Warren Sapp relished being the bad boy, being somebody who was just a little bit out there. But you wonder what what went on for Sapp to constantly throw brickbats. I'm looking at the list of the Hall of Fame candidates that are as the selection is slated for Saturday night. And there are some notable names on this list. I mean, as I spoke of earlier, Michael Strahan is still a finalist. He's being blasted by Warren Sapp for reasons I'm still trying to figure out. But there are some really good names here. Marvin Harrison, Charles Haley, Tony Dungy, who should make it on the first ballot. Ray Guy, who I've long since said should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. There's no punters in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and there's only one kicker, and I think that should be rectified with Morton Anderson. But there's going to be some names that are going to get left out, and I keep hearing all these people talk about Jerome Bettis should get in, and I really don't think he's that good of I didn't ever think he was that good of a running back. I mean, yes, he had, he played 13 seasons, 190 games. He was, I'm looking at some of the numbers here, and, 13,600 yards, which he had 8 1,000-yard seasons. But I never thought of him. I thought he was a good running back, but not a Hall of Famer. I mean, but he's always the loquacious, smiling, jeering type that seemed to always get the pub, and I never thought he was that good of a running back. Now, there's some on the NFL.com was talking about some players that may be snubbed, like Terrell Davis. Now, I like Terrell Davis. I thought he was a good running back for, it was a 3-year period from 96 to 98, where he was one of the best running backs in the game. But then he tore up his knee, and he was never the same. Yeah, he had a 2,000-yard season in 2008. Yeah, in 1998. He was one of the reasons I think the Denver Broncos won both of their Super Bowls, because they had finally a credible running back. And Terrell Davis missed one of the first cuts to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. And I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he was a good running back. Many people say, well, look at Gale Sayers. He was, he only had a brief career, but Gale Sayers did so much. And a lot of his career, when he played, he was on point. He was hurt quite a bit of the time, but he came back from injury to have a couple of decent seasons before he hung it up in 1971. He's a legit Hall of Famer, and I never doubted that. But there are some names on the list that I'm kind of like, I don't know. Players like Tim Brown, I think, should be in. But then again, you have somebody like Derrick Brooks. I keep looking at it and going, some of these names I look through. Kevin Green, no. I just, so he had 160 sacks, but I never was very big on him. Andre Reed is somebody who I say sits right on that fence line. If he gets elected to the Hall of Fame, he'll be the first Hall of Famer that was elected that had 0 All-Pro selections. And, I mean, somebody like Marvin Harrison is going to walk in the can. I don't doubt his validity as a Hall of Famer. But there are some of them that you look at. John Lynch. There's too many of these borderline so-so players that are on the list and that I'm not really sure. Strahan's I think, should have been elected last year. I think he had the numbers to make it in. But it seems that the Hall of Fame was loath to put in more than one person at one position, which explains the backlog of wide receivers that we've had over the last dozen or so years. Tim Brown might make it in, and Andre Reed probably will wait. That's the way I'm thinking. It should be that way, but the way the politics of the Hall of Fame make it a really hard choice. If you have a chance to go to Canton, go. I've been there a few times. It's a beautiful setup. I think anyone who's a football fan should go. And there are some of these players that are gonna have busts in Canton that should. And there's some that are long overdue to get busts. I'm gonna make a bold statement here. Kevin Durant is the best player in the NBA. Period. I'm not qualifying it. I'm not saying best at his position. I'm not saying best at, in the conference. I'm not saying best with a caveat. I'm saying that Kevin Durant is the best player in the NBA right now, period. Now, LeBron, I know Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant are hurt. Carmelo Anthony with his 62-point effort last week against the Bobcats. People get him noticed. LeBron has won the MVP the last 2 years. I know that. But I'm just saying, right now, as at the end of January 2014, Kevin Durant is the best player in the NBA. He can shoot. He is averaging close to, and I had to look at the numbers again, somewhere right in the neighborhood of 30 points a game. He has a 12-game streak of 30-point plus games running right now to 12. He had 33 against the Heat on Wednesday night. LeBron doesn't have that kind of streak. Michael Jordan didn't have that kind of streak. And you're looking at some really rarefied air that where Kevin Durant is pushing with this 30-point plus streak. And he's doing this and carrying the Oklahoma City Thunder to one of the best records in not only the Western Conference, but the NBA. And he's doing this without Russell Westbrook, who I think would take shots from Kevin Durant. So he's had to do a lot of this on his own. Because what Russell Westbrook is hurt, KD has had to put a lot of the scoring punch and onus on himself. But he's just doing more than just scoring. If he was just a scorer, you put him in the class of like a George Gervin or a Carmelo Anthony. Someone who's just a pure scorer. But he does so much more than that. He plays great defense. He rebounds. He can bring the ball up court if need be. He's 6'10". He does so much work night in and night out and has that scoring punch that makes him, I think, all around the best player in the NBA. And you can argue all day. I saw what the Thunder did to the Heat Wednesday night. They throttled them. Kevin Durant was everywhere, distributing the ball, getting key rebounds, playing lockdown defense. He could sit back as a 6'10" player and play in the post, get his points, get his boards. But his all-around rounded game is what makes him, I think, best player in the NBA. Make an argument against it. Talk to me about LeBron James. LeBron James, yeah, he's 6'8", built like a linebacker. But tell me the truth. If you had him on your team's down 1, 2 points, and you need somebody to take that final shot, who are you going to trust? Sure, you might trust Kobe. Getting up a little long in the tooth, though. Sure, you might trust Carmelo Anthony. Maybe. Pound the rock all the time, turn around for a jumper at 2 seconds. LeBron James, how many game winners does he have? And I'm not trying to dog on LeBron because I do like his game. But crunch time, with the money on the line, who you going to trust? My money is on Kevin Durant. And I say, without hesitation or reservation, that he is the best player in the NBA. Make an argument and convince me otherwise. I'll wait. Expect you to be coming out soon. If you read my weekly column on ugabsports.com, you know that about this time of the year I start speculating on who I think will make the NCAA tournament. The 68-team field will be set on March 16th, and looking at the calendar here at the office, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 7 weeks away. And there's going to be a lot of tossing and turning and tumbling. I mean, of course, you know, they're going to be the usual suspects in the dance, of course. Arizona, Syracuse, as much as I loathe to say it, Kentucky. You know, you're going to have a lot of the usual. My alma mater, the University of Cincinnati, 20-2. They're going to be, you know, there in the dance. But it's also the speculation on who I think is going to be there. One team that I think is going to be there, and there's not going to be any real question or doubt, is Wichita State, the Shockers. I love that nickname for some reason. The Beasts of the Missouri Valley Conference. They made it all the way, a surprising run to the Final Four last year. But unlike some of these Cinderella teams that make a run to the Final Four and no one ever hears from them again, hey, here's a team that is making a stand in the year after going to the Final Four. I always say, get to the Final Four, that's good. Do it again. Make a deep run again. Have a better team the next year. Don't ride the clock. I mean, like, look at, say, Butler. Butler got all the way to the finals one year. Turn around and did it again. I say that legitimized their program. Now, of course, that program's been decimated. That team got to the Big East primarily because of those deep Final Four runs. Now, their coach is in Boston now. But Butler laid the groundwork for a solid basketball team with those 2 national championship runs. Another team that you could look at and say they ran deep and they only did once was like, say, George Mason. George Mason got all the way to the Final Four. Okay, Jim Larinaga ran off to Miami. You haven't heard from George Mason since. Contrast to that, look at, say, my alma mater, Cincinnati. 92, they made it to the Final Four. Made it to the Elite Eight the next year. They went 16 straight years making the NCAA tournament. That was a team that the Final Four run and the Final Eight run legitimized or re-legitimized their program. They won 2 national championships 30 years previous, but they had came back after a long layoff. Now you look at Wichita State. They made the Final Four last year, and many people say, you know, who is this team? You know, their run was, if you forgive the pun, shocking. But this year, they're even better. They're 22-0. That's right, 22 wins and no losses. And many people look and go, yeah, they're playing in the Missouri Valley. They're playing, but think about it. How many undefeated teams are in college basketball right now? I'll wait. Go ahead and think. 3. Arizona, Syracuse, and Wichita State. All 3 of these teams are top 5 teams. All 3 of these teams are legitimately good. I mean, look at this team. They have great rebounds. Fred VanVleet is just a beast running this team. And this is a team that you look at and say, you know, they have staying power. They're a strong, quote-unquote, mid-major. Look at a team like Gonzaga. Look at a team like BCU with you know, their coaches. You know, Mark Few stayed at Gonzaga. Shaka Smart has stayed at BCU. I want to see if Wichita State can keep this staying power. And a 22-0 run is legitimizing this team. Now, whether a coach all of a sudden decide to run for greener pastures, like Jim Larinaga did with George Mason running to Miami, like Florida Gulf Coast cashing in his chips, running to Southern Cal, who knows? But my bet is that Wichita State is a legitimate team, and they're going to be a tough out come March. The media doesn't want to talk about them. They want to talk about Arizona. They want to talk about Syracuse. But when you talk about Wichita State, you get they start mumbling in their hand, and They're not a good team. But I want you to bank it right now. You heard it here first. Wichita State is going to be a team that no one wants to deal with come March. Book it. Now let's look at the Fat Dap and Head Slap of the Week. This week's Fat Dap goes to University of Louisville guard Russ Smith, who was visiting a local high school in Louisville to support one of his friends that was coaching one of the teams, and they were playing Louisville Manual. They were playing at Louisville Manual, and it was their homecoming. And one of the females in the homecoming court, a freshman by the name of Tanisha Curry, was stood up by her date, which of course is never cool. Russ Smith saw that what was happening, and stepped in to be her escort for the homecoming court. Which, if you saw the picture, that just a look of just utter surprise and shock and look at me type of smile on her face is priceless. And though, of course, me being a Bearcat and never having any kind of love for Louisville, I have to give him that. It was a great move, a gracious move by a solid player, and a classy move by the Cardinals guard and captain. So fat dap to Russ Smith. Now the head slap of the week is going to the mayor of Sochi, Russia. And of course, Sochi is where the Olympics are due to kick off here in a few days. Anatoly Pacquiao. I'm looking at the name to make sure I'm halfway reading it right. If I misspell his name, I mispronounce his name, I really don't care. Because he made this, and I think of this really, really ignorant comment saying of the residents of his town that there are no gay residents of his town. Now, of course, there's been a major flap in Russia about their premier Putin saying that gays are not welcome in Russia and that they're breaking the laws. And just the overall ignorance just floors me the way that they're acting. But Pacquiao gets the head slap for just the telling the BBC that there are no gays in this town, and if there were, he's never seen them and he's never had any encounters with them. If he really believes in his town that there are no gay residents, there's a beautiful bridge in Brooklyn that I would love to sell him and see if he'd be interested in. It's one of those things, ignorance has no place, period, especially in the sporting world. Intolerance is just stupid. And to open your mouth like that and to express that stupidity, that deserves nothing short of a head slap. Well, with music coming up in the background, you know that your time in Hoodwood is just about done. I appreciate you stopping by for this week's show. If you have any questions, comments, or show topics, send me an email at kjgreen920@gmail.com. I welcome your comments, critiques. If you have any show ideas, hey, I'm a flexible guy. I can listen to the suggestions. And you never know, I might just give you a little bit of credit for a show topic. You can also catch the column every week on ugabsports.com. Put it out every Tuesday. And every week I do the video blog right here on YouTube. And depending on the production schedule, it comes out either Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending on when I can get it done. Things been busy in the Hoodwood, so try to get things done as quickly as we can. I will be back next week with more sports discussion and topics. I'll see you next week here on Musings. Until next post, fellow sportsmen.